Welcome to the Industry 4.0 podcast with Grantek.
Hi, welcome to today's episode of the Industry 4.0 podcast with Grantek, where we give our audience a look into the world of manufacturing with a focus on the modern technology trends that we commonly call Industry 4.0. Our guests come and share their thoughts on the subject, their experiences around what works and what doesn't, and share some tips that help lead you to a successful digital transformation. My name is Sam Russum. I am the Senior Director of Smart Manufacturing Solutions at Grantek, and today I am joined by my colleague, Huck Bales. Huck is the Director of MES and Digital Solutions Engineering at Grantek. He has over 30 successful years of providing systems development, project management, and consulting services for manufacturers. He's managed large projects with scope, schedule, and budget responsibilities, has a very solid understanding of business and technical issues, and a very natural ability to communicate with clients, managers, peers, and staff around these complex topics. Huck spent a lot of time working with clients to define their functional requirements and drive better production using improved technology. Huck, really great to have you here.
Thanks, Sam. Great to be here.
Awesome.
Looking forward to a great conversation with you.
Yeah, me too. I'm really happy to have you on. Again, like Huck and I get to hang out and talk about this stuff all the time. The only thing that's weird is that we don't have beer this time. I'll submit to marketing maybe next time.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
Cool. So, hey, well, let's go ahead and get started with kind of the big elephant in the room style question. Tell me, what does Industry 4.0 mean to Mr. Huck Bales?
I think there's three important pieces to it. The first one is people, and I think this is really the crux of it. Industry 3.0 was about automation, right? We're actually taking the people out of the equation, doing automating and with PLC code and sensors and that sort of thing. And for me, 4.0 is about bringing the people back into the equation, is using those automated systems and all that PLC equipment that we put in to get the information out and add context to it and put it in a presentable way that people can act on it as production is happening in near real time. So that's to me that's the first and most important part. The second piece is context. I mentioned that in the first part. The ability now to add context to the data. So if I can tell you that not just that the amps on the motor are 28, but that I can tell you that the motor is actually producing the process order XYZ and the product, I can now use that information to do more interesting things and discern something from it. Mm-hmm. So people, context. And the last one is technology, right? Of course, there is so much technology that is available now that enables all those first two things to happen.
Yeah, and I actually, this does make sense. I feel like you hit those major points that I feel like a lot of people talk about with Industry 4.0, but in the opposite order of what most people say, right? Most people kind of start with all the technology trends and then say it's doing cool things like adding context and maybe some people will use it at some points. But your point around like that this might actually increase staff or change the staff that you might have to actually be interpreting and working with this data, I think is a good point. And it's honestly a good a core tenet to the way that I've seen you work with manufacturers. You talk about this stuff. It's, well, what are the people going to do? Like, how are they going to go and access the system or put in this information or use all of this? And it's seems simple when you say it, but it's a thing that people miss all the time.
Yeah. It's I think that's really true. And whatever you do isn't going to be successful without the people, right? I mean, we can build this amazing MES solution, but if the people on the line, the production supervisors, the managers aren't ready for that technology, it's not going to do any good, right? Mm-hmm. It's not going to help.
Well, Huck, but me and my plant, we've been told to be cutting OpEx for decades now, right? Because and people is one of the most important and most expensive parts, kind of that OpEx equation. So if I'm maybe even adding people as a part of this effort, where am I as a manufacturer getting my ROI from these projects if it's not from scaling down that OpEx?
So first of all, go read the goal. And you can learn about the perils of cost accounting, but in manufacturing. But seriously, we're not adding people. What we're doing is we're enabling the people that are there to do a better job of ensuring that the manufacturing that needs to get done is done correctly the first time, that we're reducing scrap, that we're not putting the wrong labels on, that sort of thing. The label thing comes to my mind. The label verification thing that we've been doing for a while now for our customers is Industry 4.0, right?
Yeah.
We are taking the context of, we know what product should be made on the line, where there's a camera there that says, yep, that one passes, right? That's to me, that's Industry 4.0. In that case, it's a really simple example where you can now inform an operator or a production supervisor immediately, hey, this label isn't the one that you think you're running right now. It says grapefruit juice and the production order is for orange juice. What's going on here? So obviously you're going to have great benefits from that right away.
Yeah. Well, and also, again, like kind of continuing with that labeling example, right? I completely agree with you. These computer vision label verification systems are a good example of Industry 4.0. And how do you solve that problem without these technologies? You have a person sitting on the line watching this stuff, right? And the issue with that is not necessarily what you need to pay for that person to do it. It's the fact that that's all that person can do. And if that person's job is to just watch labels on a manufacturing line all day, they're not going to be as reliable as a camera. They're going to take a nap or take a break or miss something. Or it's a tough job, right? We're trying to take some of that tedious stuff out and use intelligent systems to solve for those instead.
Exactly. Using the automation for what it's good for, and using the people for doing the things that they're better at, right? You're exactly right. The other example that comes to my mind is in the 3.0 versus 4.0, environments is the automation of, let's say, a filling machine, right? 3.0 automated that machine. That machine can fill bottles of that orange juice or maybe a beer, like you suggested earlier, much faster and much more reliable than a person can, right? That's obvious, and we've been doing that for a long time. But with 4.0, I can grab, let's make an assumption that we have an automated filler, we have a SCADA system, let's say ignition. We know that's a pretty valid assumption today. We have a database, right? And we have Power BI. We already have all those things, and the Power BI thing is also, most of our customers today have that, right? They have Office 365. Power BI is baked in, right? So for me, a very simple idea of 4.0 is in taking that context and people aspect. We add in our SCADA system, we add a little bit of code that once, let's say every 10 minutes, we grab the count from the filler. And we put that data into a new table that we just built. And in that table, we put the count and we put the production order and we put the product. Okay, that's it. We're done. And that's something that we can have that built by this afternoon. Then we point Power BI at that table, and now we make a dashboard that shows the production supervisor how many bottles got filled during this shift by, let's say, we make a little a little bar chart for every 10 minutes in the hour. So whatever it is, it doesn't have to be high res. The point is, he now has a real time trend of how he's doing for his shift for the day. He didn't have to buy any expensive MES software. He didn't have to make much investment at all. And so I think we can scale it down to that small of a thing.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point and a good example. And then I would kind of ask, so as you had mentioned, a lot of the systems that you're talking about are leveraging technologies that a plant might already have today. It's not some big new implementation. It's using your existing SCADA system, your existing database, your existing Power BI or Microsoft subscription. So what industries can you think of that might have a lot of these component parts, but maybe aren't realizing or seizing those opportunities to tie all these pieces of information together?
So all of them.
So someone maybe that like we don't work with as much kind of at Grantek, like kind of one of those people that you wish were hearing this message that don't get to hear it enough, you know?
Yeah. Well, so, and I was serious when I said all of them, because when I look at our customers, of course, a lot of our customers are implementing MES with us, and that's, where I spend most of my time. Right. But I look at all of the work that we do that's not MES, and there's a lot of big companies who aren't taking advantage of some of this stuff, and that are paying us to do big automation projects for them still today. And why wouldn't we add that on? So that's my first part of the answer. The second part is, I think that the small to mid-sized manufacturers that sometimes we engage with, but not as much. I think that's where there's a big upside to tell. I think there's that they can take advantage of some of the, like the example we just talked of. They can build some simple tables and point Power BI at it and have some dashboards. And then you can grow it from there, right? And maybe at some point you realize that you're getting good data, but you're not getting the resolution you need, or you really want to know more about downtime. Then you have information that a story to tell to your management team that, hey, look what we just did with a little more investment. We can add an OEE module and actually get better understanding of the details of what's going on the floor.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you, and I actually do think that separation between larger manufacturers and then more small to medium manufacturing businesses is an important one, because like when I think of those big manufacturers that we work with, their biggest challenge is usually around like standardization and consistency across plants, right? They've acquired these assets over and over again, changed hands many times.
Yep.
The issue that you have with your Industry 4.0 data systems is the complete unpredictable variety of systems that needs to interact with, right? Whereas, and good on them to kind of focus on those problems, right? They're not going to be able to have something that lasts unless they can really apply and support it at scale. Whereas for more of those small to medium businesses, it might be more of a, how do I take those systems that I do have today, maybe augment them a little bit, but like kind of it's more, how can I kind of squeeze more juice out of what I already have?
Exactly. Yep.
Great. Yeah. So Huck, you and I have worked together at Grantek for a while, but of course you've had a storied career before this, lots of stuff that I maybe haven't heard about that's more fun. So tell me kind of one of those more fun, surprising stories kind of from your past around kind of applying all this technology to customers, and kind of some of the other experiences that you have had that I haven't gotten to hear about yet.
Yeah, I think maybe I haven't told you this story. I helped a largish fast food manufacturer company build an automated kitchen.
Okay, this does sound a little familiar, but let's keep going. I want to hear more.
Yes. Yeah. So we worked with the OEMs that were building that supplied equipment to making French fries and hamburgers and those sorts of products to add some automation and some information processing. And the idea was to bring information right from the right from the order to the machine, so that those French fries were as fresh as they could be when they got handed to you at the drive-through. So it was totally one of those things that was completely surprising, and we implemented a bunch of 4.0 technologies in there. We were using MQTT to communicate through to some of the external systems back and forth. We used Node-RED to do some of the logic processing. There was some AI in there that was predicting, looking at the weather to predict. Is today going to be a heavier day or a lighter day? So should we make some more French fries or not?
Interesting. And that does really make a lot of sense. I mean, the idea of a fast food restaurant and a factory is really not that different, right? You get your raw materials in, you have your orders come in, you have equipment, you have people to make those orders, you fulfill them. So like it is interesting to think about a restaurant as a small scale factory, and and how'd that go?
It went pretty well. The other thing I wanted to mention about it is that their goal wasn't actually reducing people. Okay. It was improving consistency and improving throughput. So they were going to go faster for sure. And then as I said, that quality thing about making sure that they don't make too many fries, right? So they're going to reduce the number of wasted French fries, and they're going to make sure that they're as fresh as possible when you show up. So there were challenges, though. It turns out that if you want to automatically feed a hamburger bun onto a conveyor, the mechanics of that are really complicated.
I could humidity,
the freshness of that bun, the humidity in the room, all those things impact the way the manufacturing gets done. So
programming machines that have to work in the real world is a little bit different than kind of all that web design programming. Yeah,
and it speaks to the point of how far do you go with automation, and what is the right point for the people to take over? And Absolutely. So I think that was actually another interesting part of that project.
Yeah, that's cool. So maybe the most important question that I asked this entire season: did you call that a robot-sterant?
I didn't. No, that's a good question. No.
Well, I'll have to talk to Jeff about if I'm able to trademark or copyright a phrase just because I said it on a podcast. Okay.
I think so.
Cool. So switching gears a little bit, tell me again, like you and I are both kind of staying in loop with all kind of the trends that are going on and trying to see kind of what we really think is going to take and what's not in manufacturing. Tell me, what's one of those things that you see really making a big impact over the next 5 years that isn't really commonplace yet today?
I think that there's a couple of changes that we're going to see in the next 5 years. One is the current practice that we have a full-blown MES system that we build that is on-prem. I think we're going to see that change, and we're already seeing some of that. I think that the ISA 95 is great, and we use it all the time to help our customers define requirements, and we use technologies that conform to that standard. But I went back and looked in preparation for this, and that started in 2001. Was when it was ISA 95 got started, right? And it's hierarchical. And the technologies we have today are breaking down the requirement or even the necessity, I'll say, or even the desire to have that hierarchy. So I think some of that's going to break down. And I think that some of what we currently do in OEE is going to get replaced by those data tables that we talked about, and data lakes in Azure AWS, and more sophisticated dashboards and analysis UI that's happening up there in the standard IT space, right? Some of that's going to go up. Our customers still need on-prem functionality that is mission critical, right? You're not going to put your PID loop in the cloud. right?
Yes.
So, and you're not going to put your recipe management probably in the cloud. But so, what I see is I see that our traditional MES thing breaking apart a bit, and that mission critical piece I think becomes a lot more modular. And I think a thing like Node-RED is the combination of Node-RED and containers allows me to deploy from my cloud vendor of choice as many Node-RED instances as I need to for a given process that's managed, that sits right in front of that PLC. Let's say maybe there's an edge device that runs these containers, and they're managing the PLC and providing context back up to the cloud of what's got done, as well as to the UIs for people on the ground, so that the production supervisor is looking at the whole thing on his phone, on their phone, or even the operator, right? They're using their phone to they're going to get an alert that the production count is down, and they need to go look at something or change the label, whatever.
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that. Actually, I recently got interviewed for a different podcast. Actually, Automation World interviewed me, and this is a question that came up, and I had a very kind of similar answer around more like IoT applications, right? And again, IoT is its own little buzzword and things like that. But I do think that is kind of a good application of these smaller IoT apps performing functions that would typically be more of in the MES, done by MES software, and are solving problems in the manufacturing operations management space, whether that be MES or not. So totally agree.
Yeah, I think that's where, and I'm excited. That's going to be fun. And I think I think that we'll define patterns. Like that thing I talked about is pretty vague, but there'll be specific patterns of managing a production order for a machine, right? And that's gonna drop in as a thing that has standard inputs and outputs, and within the Node-RED or whatever the technology is. You could do this. You could do a similar thing even with your current Ignition installation if you wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's crazy to think too that in a more software oriented world today, where there might be a dozen, recipe management pieces of software that might solve your problem. What happens in the future if there's 500 recipe apps out there, all of high quality, and you can maybe even get something even closer out of the box that's going to fit your process than having to take one of the dozen things available and adapt it, right? So more selection, more competition, more ideas of ways that you can find an app that's going to solve your needs. So
yeah.
So, hey, as we start to close up here, I do take a question that was asked by a previous guest and kind of bring it in for this session. So a previous guest had asked me, and I think this is a good one for you, because it's all about talent in manufacturing too, and that people side of things. So if there's all this focus on kind of attracting new talent in manufacturing, we have a lot of existing talent that is also retiring, right? So kind of these people that have been working on these lines for a really long time, either not ready to retire or kind of need to get repurposed or things like that. So I think it kind of goes both ways. If you're somebody who is kind of doing a line expert job that's being kind of where technology is coming in and replacing some of those functions, how do you continue to provide value? And then also, if you're kind of new talent coming in and there is kind of a lot of history at that plant of how to run certain equipment or processes, what are the best tips that we have to upskill that talent to take on some of those tasks?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and a fair one, since I started off with people, right? So I do think it's the big challenge, and that labor thing is going to continue to be the limiting factor, right? Yeah. I just had a call with one of our customers who was one of the problems they're facing is that the operator's not closing the work order at the end of the shift, right? Because guess what? They're going home. Yep. And we just had a really good conversation back and forth, and it's like, well, it seems like you trust those operators to make food that is that's safe, right? And you should be able to trust them to close the work order. And the reality is, they are, they struggle to get have staff that are consistent. There's turnover, and so asking them to do one more thing in that particular environment it just wasn't realistic. It just wasn't going to happen, or expecting them to do it. So I think that's going to continue to be the challenge on both sides. Is as far as so the app that's going to inform that person needs to be really clear and really simple, and provide that context so that they that they have known responses of things to do is the one thing. But also, like the new people coming in, once you train them up, and if you can keep them, they're used to dealing with the technology, right? They grew up with the phone. So so leveraging that, I think, is important. And then for that older generation, I think if you are lucky enough to still have them around, it's making sure that you're leveraging what they know, right? And providing them with the context that they can use to act on the things they already know, right?
Yeah. Well, and also just to think about, and this is a kind of a fresh idea, so catch me on it if I'm off base, but 30 years ago, we start to introduce these SCADA systems and HMIs. There's a bunch of training for the operators that are using that, because, oh my gosh, this is the first time I've had a computer touchscreen in my plant. Like, everybody's got to understand this, right? I feel like there's some expectation that, like, oh, well, when I hire somebody new today, they know how a computer works. They know how a touchscreen works. Of course, they have some idea of this technology and how to use it, but only if it's really designed that way, right? If that was a system that was designed 30 years ago and you have some 20-something coming in to work on it today, things are very go back and look at an old Windows 95 application and tell me if you think that your kid could go and figure that out, right?
They're going to be annoyed.
Yeah, exactly.
And rightly so.
Yeah.
Let's update that system.
Yeah. Well, and how important UX is, and how much UX expectations have changed over time.
For sure.
It's really interesting to think about. So pay it forward a little bit, Huck. What's a question that you want me to try to stump our next guest with?
My question is, how would you reduce the friction for the system integrators of the world, the end users who are trying to grab these new technologies and make them useful in their plants?
That's I could use an answer to that. Good one.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think that's a good question. And one we need to keep working towards. And there's a corollary question, if I can ask too.
Sure.
The other one is, how do we as a community, and I'm talking about all the people who are building technology solutions, whether that's end users, our customers, SIs, how do we work together to build those standard design patterns, ways of doing things to help all of us, right? To work to not have to reinvent the wheel. How do we take these off-the-shelf technologies like Node-RED mentioned a couple of times? How do we build some templates or standard ways of deploying those things that make sense, so that we can all benefit from it?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think especially, again, like kind of if we're following through the threads of some of the things we're talking about of like more commercial technologies or things we're used to today, as they kind of come into manufacturing more, it is more open source code. It is more sharing. It is more kind of community engagement. That is really what kind of has driven a lot of the Web 3.0 and the app movements. And usually manufacturing lags behind that a little bit, but follows,
Yeah, I think it's time. And I think that, when I think about some of our customers, they're investing a lot of money to build these solutions, right? But the thing that they're the thing that they've built and the things they're doing, let's say it's a standard way of defining the data sets that are coming out of PLCs.
Mm-hmm.
That is not that's going to help them build a better foundation across their enterprise. But I don't think it's IP that is something that they need to that helps them to hang on to and not share.
Yeah.
And in fact, if they share it and that, their way of doing things becomes standard use, then that helps them because more suppliers are going to understand that thing. So I think there's a story for us and for our customers to open up a bit and be better at defining those patterns and making a more efficient way to develop this stuff.
No, that was great. I really agree with you, Huck, and I really kind of like that idea of kind of being open and sharing more in the way that kind of, again, that we can all kind of help each other out, from manufacturers and integrators and technology providers. I mean, that is kind of how the tide rises. So I think it's a great point, and probably a good one to end on. So again, Huck, thanks a lot for joining me on the podcast today. I hope that all of our audience really enjoyed this. I thought that was really good perspective. Really appreciate you being on the show, Huck.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And next time, let's do this again. And next time, let's have a beer.
We'll have a beverage. Yeah, that sounds good. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that might be one of the explicit episodes that we need to kind of put that tag on. We'll see.
There we go. Maybe.
All right. Well, hey, thank you everybody for listening. A quick reminder that we would love to hear from you. Please do follow Grantek on LinkedIn to stay up to date with what we're doing. Subscribe to the Industry 4.0 podcast with Grantek wherever you happen to get your podcasts. You can email any questions or feedback to info@grantek.com and join us next time on the Industry 4.0 podcast with Grantek. Thanks again, Huck. We'll see you next time.
Cheers.